A very warm welcome to Durham Cathedral's online Quiet Day on the theme of calling and vocation. It's a delight to be able to give the first reflection this morning, and I hope you're journeying well already in this holy time together. A few Saturdays ago, I found myself standing in Chester Cathedral, preaching at the ordination of 9 priests. It was a tremendous occasion, full of joy and of hope. And amidst the wonder of it all, one sentence read by the bishop from the ordinal really stood out to me and has been bouncing around my mind and my heart ever since. And it was this: priests with all God's people are called to tell the story of God's love. Priests with all God's people are called to tell the story of God's love. How marvellously simple is that? And it helps to blow an unhelpful stereotype right out of the water by reminding us all that everybody has a vocation, all God's people, a calling. Not just clergy or monks and nuns or perhaps teachers or nurses, everyone. And that includes you and me. A vocation to tell the story of God's love. How we do that will vary enormously, but the calling remains the same. Just pause and think about that for a few moments. How have you embraced that calling in your life so far? How have you sought to tell the story of God's love? Perhaps by caring for someone who was ill or anxious, symbolising God's presence with them and love for them. Perhaps by being attentive to the homeless person curled up in a sleeping bag in a doorway and engaging with them as an individual, recognising the spark of the divine gazing back at you. Perhaps by being a hotshot lawyer working for justice where God's light has been eclipsed by oppression and violence. Perhaps by stopping to chat to the colleague at work who's having a difficult time, rather than dashing past with your mind on the next project or task. Perhaps through your profession. Whether in work, in volunteering, or simply in the bread and butter of daily life, the calling is there to tell the story of God's love. Some do this in ways that are noticed and celebrated by others. Some do it in ways that are unseen and fleeting. But all are equal, all are valued. Let me tell you about Elsie, a member of one of my former congregations many years ago. It really was many years ago now. She's been dwelling in heavenly places for some time. Elsie had been a teacher in a large secondary school in quite a tough area. She felt called to that school to make a difference, to make a commitment to the young people, to give them hope, to help them achieve their potential, and to know that they were important. And she did so marvellously for over 30 years, allowing those children to be the people amongst whom she lived and breathed God's story of love. And then Elsie retired and grew older. Her health was failing, and she couldn't really get out of the house very easily to do the things she used to do. And she got rather down about that. And one day, Elsie contacted me to say that she had seen we were looking for people within the church to welcome families bringing their children for baptism. And she tearfully told me over a cup of tea how much she would have loved to be involved in that. But now she was housebound. It was impossible. Where, she said, is my calling, my vocation now? How do I tell the story of God's love when I can't even leave my chair? And then Elsie had an epiphany, because in her hands were her knitting needles. she could still knit. And knit she did, because a new calling emerged. Elsie knitted a beautiful baptism shawl for every child who came to be baptized at that church. A shawl of white, symbolizing the hope and joy and life of the resurrection. She knitted with love, praying for each child by name as she did so. And as each child was clothed in that shawl, the parents were gifted a card from Elsie with a promise that as long as she lived, she would pray for their child every single day from her armchair, giving thanks for the wonderful gift of their life. Elsie had found a new vocation, a new calling, a new way to tell the story of God's love, and it was rejoiced in by so very many. Like Elsie, the way in which we tell the story of God's love may change through the seasons, yet each of us is called, chosen to live out that vocation in whatever way we can. And in doing so, each of us is blessed. Blessed in that we bring something ordinary, our very lives, and find them transformed by God. That is the calling of all the baptized, the vocation of the people of God. I wonder what it means for you in the here and now. How do you embrace your calling to tell the story of God's love? For with all God's people, that is what you are invited to do. A reading from Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to each other, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live amongst a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here I am. Send me. Thank you for joining us for this first reflection on our quiet day. We hope you make the most of the gift of time and space to reflect on your vocation and calling. And we look forward to seeing you at noon here on this live stream for midday prayer.